Today we will be discussing about subnet mask and we'll discuss about default gateway. So what is subnet mask and what is default gateway? So before that, in part 1 that we started with the computer networks address. So computer network address are basically two types. One is physical address. So the physical address is basically what we saw is the MAC address, what we referred to. And then we started with the logical address. And with this logical address, that is basically what we refer as IPv4 and IPv6. So we know that IPv4 is 32 bits and IPv6 is 128 bits. So IPv6 part we'll discuss in detail in our next video. So IPv4 is 32 bits and based on this IPv4 it divides in 4 parts and each part is what 8 bits. So 8 bit is what 1 byte. So you can also say that an IPv4 is 4 byte. Then we covered about IPv4. With IPv4 is divided in 2 ranges. One is private IP and the other one is public IP. So when we talk about private IP, this refers to the So when we talk about private IP, this refers to the LAN side of it. We configure the LAN side of in the private IP range. And whenever we need any IPs to route in the internet, we configure this in the WAN side of it. After that, we also cover basically the how we can convert our IP address 192.168 29.242 IP address, which we fetch from where your command prompt, right? And then we converted this in what? We converted this in a binary format. So this is called as what? Decimal format, decimal notation, which separated by 3 decimals. So this one is basically the binary format. The computer understand this, and this is what for a human readable perspective, we configure in a decimal notation an IP address. So now we will see that what is subnet mask and what is the default gateway. What do you mean by this? What is the use case of subnet mask and what is the use of default gateway? Before we deep dive into subnet mask, we need to see that what is subnet mask. For example, you will have a phone number, right? You are in a region, let's say you are in US and someone is in India. How you will able to identify while dialing from US to India? So basically India code is 91 plus 1 code is US. So what will happen? So this area code, right? This country code, this is a country code, this is a country code. Whatever the country code is, that represents India. This country code plus 1 represent US. And based on that, you will have what? Following numbers. Similarly, you will have following numbers from this. So in this case, what will happen? Before you dial in from India to US, you need to dial this number, right? Which represents the country. Before from US, when you dial in, you have to dial in plus 91 and then followed by the number. That is what represents India as a code, right? The country code. Similarly, when we talk about subnet mask, so subnet mask is what? In an IP address, we will have an IP address for, let's say an IP address is 192.168.1.10. This is an IP address which is 32 bits. So when we represent an IP address, this IP address divided in two parts. One is network, another is basically the host part. The network part is being assigned to a LAN environment. The host part will be assigned to each and individual devices. So if you assign different host part, so it will able to what? It will able to communicate. So this makes an IP address unique. So subnet mask, you can think like you have a large network, and from the large network, what we can do, we can divide the network into small networks based on the need of the IP address. So which will make an IP assignment unique and efficient. So every IP address will have a subnet mask associated with this, right? So the subnet mask, let's say 255.255.0. So if you see this in the subnet mask, the first three octets, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Out of this, the first three octet is what? 255, means all ones. Everything is 1, and then we will have what? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. What do you mean by this? So if all the bits are turned on, then the value is 255. So if the number is 255, then the first octet of the IP address is remain unchanged. Similarly, if the second octet is 255, the second octet will remain unchanged. If the third octet is 255, the third octet will also remain unchanged. So we cannot change this part of it, the first, second, and third octet, because first, second, and third octet is all turned on. So basically we will have everything is 250. Whatever is 255 in your subnet mask, this part of it will be remain unchanged. If this part is remain any part in the IP address, for example, I have 192.168.1.10, and from the subnet mask I came to know that this part is remain unchanged, then it will set to be as network address. This is my network address based on this 255.255.255.0. So 255.255.255.0 is what? 8, 8, 8, and then 0. So which makes it to 24. If anything which is written in this format, in decimal, anything which written in this format, in decimal notation, we can also say that it is called as /24. So how many remaining bits are in 0? The remaining bits, 8 bits are in 0. So it will give us a range from 0 to 255. And whatever the part is 0 in the subnet mask is what referred to as host part. This is my host part of it. So if this one is my network part, and the last one is my host bit, and from this bit I came to know that I have what? 0 to 255 range. So from this part of it, I can configure 0 to 255. So 0 is being assigned to what? The network. The last IP address will be assigned to what? Broadcast. And remaining, so 2 to the power of 8 is what? We will have 255 minus 2, which is 253 addresses we can assign. So this part of the IP address is what called as network address. And this part is what is called as host address, because in our subnet mask we have 0 here. So if it is 0, then we can assign this fourth octet starting from 0 to 255 range. Now, for example, if I have a network, so this is a LAN environment. Let's say LAN 1. And in this LAN environment, we need to have one network. And based on this network, we will have assigned that to the hosts. So let's say network is 192.168.1.0. And then we will have a subnet mask for this is 255.255.255.0. So the first octet, second and third octet is all are ones. So this is my network address and this is my host part of it. So from this host part of it, I can assign 256 addresses 0 to 255. So out of this, now I can assign 192.168.1.1 to this, 192.168.1.2, 192.168.1.3, and 192.168.1.4. So if you see that in all the four devices that we have, if you see that all the four devices that we have, the network address is same. This four devices belongs to the same network and the host part is different. As a result, what happened is it makes the IP unique assigned to each devices so that they will able to communicate using the IP address, different IP address. So this is about the subnet mask. So if you go to your command prompt and do IP config again, what we have an IP address. IP address, we have a subnet mask associated to the IP address. So it will say what? The first, second, and third octet is fixed. Means all are 1. That means what is my network? My network is 192.168.29. This is my network. And then the last octet is what? 0. This last octet is my host part of it. So this is what? My network address. This is my network address. And then host address, as my PC is connected to a wireless router. That wireless router is assigning IP address to each and every devices that is there in my home. So this laptop been assigned with .242. That means this router can assign 0 to the network, remaining IP 253 IP address to all the devices that I have in my home. One address 255.255 will assign to a broadcast address. So one is broadcast address, one is network address, and one more IP will be there that is called as default gateway. So what is the job of this default gateway? Now let's discuss about this default gateway. What is this default gateway is? So imagine that you are inside a house, right? And in that house, basically what is there? So you will have a main gate to exit, to come out from this house. And then that house is being divided in different rooms. Okay. So consider this house is as a network. Okay. This entire house is a network. This room numbers are what? You can consider this as a host IP address. To come out of this house, you need what? The main entrance. This considered to be a default gateway. So why we need a default gateway? So for example, this is house 101. And then you want to go to house 102, right? So considering this as a different network, and then we will have what? Rooms inside that. and then we will have a main gate. So which refer to what? Which refer to as a default gateway. So person 1 from this house, when he wants to come and meet person 2 of this house, he has to come out of this house. So he has to come out from what? The default gateway. Similarly, he want to come out from the default gateway and they can meet. So the default gateway basically forwards the data to an appropriate network. Similarly, a default gateway here, a default gateway is here. This is a network, for example, this is a LAN 1. This is basically LAN 2. So LAN 1 will have a network. LAN 2 will have a network. LAN 1 wants to communicate with LAN 2. What will happen? LAN 1 network range will have a default gateway. LAN 2 network will have a default gateway. And then, so what facilitates your default gateway? So the default gateway is a way to forward your packet outside your network. Okay, so let's take an example and then see. So we have a LAN 1 network, right? And this will connect to our default gateway, layer 3 device. With this layer 3 device, or else let's say a layer 3 device is between that, and you will have another network that been connected like this. So what a router is, what logically separates the network, correct? So what I can do here, I will assign 192.168.1.0/24. Here I will assign 192.168.10.0/24. /24 means, if I refer to /24 means, is 255.255.255.0. So my 24 bits are all ones. If it is 255 all ones, then this will be my network address. Similarly, this will be my network address. And then I assign .1 to this, .2 to this, .3 to this. I assign .1 to this, .2 to this, .3 to this. If PC A wants to communicate with PC Z, so 192.168.1.1 communication with 192.168.110.3. So we need to assign a default gateway in the exit interface of my network, of my LAN 2. So I will assign a default gateway 192.168.10.100 in this network, in this interface. Similarly, to go outside of this network LAN 1, I will assign an IP address default gateway for my network in this interface, 192.168.1.100. So this is my 1.100 interface. This is my 10.100 interface. This is my L3 router. And this router, what does routers do? Routers separate two different networks. So when I want to communicate 1.1 to 10.3, in order to communication happens, it has to reach to the default gateway first. Default gateway will route that destination IP address to the other network to 10.3. So every time when you cross your network, when you want to cross your network, for example, in this case LAN 1 and LAN 2, we need to cross a default gateway from this network. We need to get inside a default gateway through the default gateway to this interface. Similar to the concept of two different houses, we need to go through what? We need to go through the main entrance, the gateway, the gate of this house to meet a person X and Y. Same as default gateway here.